What if the toughest men in Hollywood were hiding the truth about who they really loved? Behind the explosive stunts, the intense fight scenes, and the charming smiles they flashed at their leading ladies, these action heroes carried a secret they couldn't reveal. From Western gunslingers to spy thriller stars, these 15 action legends took their truth to the grave. Number 15. Rock Hudson Rock. Hudson was the ultimate masculine ideal of 1950s Hollywood. Standing tall at 6'5", with chiseled features and a magnetic smile, he dominated the screen in action-packed films like Giant and intense war dramas like A Farewell to Arms. Studios marketed him as the perfect romantic hero, the guy every woman dreamed would sweep her off her feet. Behind that carefully crafted image was a completely different reality. Studio executives went to extraordinary lengths to protect their investment, arranging fake dates with glamorous actresses and even pushing him into a sham marriage with his agent's secretary, Phyllis Gates. Hudson lived in constant fear of exposure. The press followed his every move, and one slip could end everything he'd worked for. In private, he attended secret parties with other closeted stars where they could briefly drop the exhausting charade they maintained in public. When AIDS struck in the 1980s, Hudson faced his toughest battle. As his health deteriorated, rumors swirled. When he finally revealed his diagnosis in 1985, it sent shockwaves through Hollywood and America. The man who embodied rugged masculinity was gay and dying of AIDS. His death that same year marked a turning point in how America viewed both AIDS and homosexuality. The star who spent his life hiding in plain sight ultimately did more to change perceptions by his death than many activists achieved in lifetimes of advocacy. His friend Elizabeth Taylor later said, "He was the kindest, gentlest giant. His suffering forced a nation to confront its prejudices." Number 14. Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power dominated action cinema in the 1930s and 40s with his unmatched skill as a swashbuckling hero. His fencing abilities in films like The Mark of Zorro and The Black Swan left audiences breathless, while his intense stare and flawless features made him one of Hollywood's most bankable heartthrobs. On screen, he embodied masculine strength and romantic passion. Off-screen, Power navigated a dangerous double life. Studio heads at 20th Century Fox marketed him aggressively as the ultimate ladies' man, and Power played along. He married 3 times and was linked publicly to some of Hollywood's most beautiful actresses, creating the perfect smokescreen for his true attractions. According to multiple biographers and close friends who spoke after his death, Power had relationships with men throughout his life, including rumored affairs with composer Lawrence Hart and actor Watson Webb. Hector Arce's biography, The Secret Life of Tyrone Power, detailed how the star would escape to Mexico or Europe when the pressure of maintaining his false image became too intense. Cesar Romero, who was also gay but more open in private circles, once remarked, "Ty loved danger in all aspects of his life. His riskiest stunts weren't on film, but in how closely he danced with scandal." Power's untimely death at just 44 from a heart attack while filming Solomon and Sheba ensured his secrets remained largely intact during the conservative 1950s. His daughter Romina Power wouldn't learn about this side of her father until decades after his death. "He lived in a time when being himself would have destroyed everything," she said. "His greatest performance was the one he gave every day off camera." Number 13. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr became a household name playing tough, no-nonsense heroes like the wheelchair-using detective Ironside and the brilliant, unbeatable Perry Mason. His commanding presence, deep voice, and intimidating build made him perfect for roles that required both physical and intellectual strength. What viewers never suspected was that this icon of masculine authority was living an elaborate lie. Burr created one of Hollywood's most complex cover stories. He invented not 1 but 3 marriages, including a fictional wife named Annette Sutherland, who he claimed died in the same plane crash that killed actor Leslie Howard. Most heartbreakingly, he fabricated a son named Michael who supposedly died of leukemia at age 10. These tragic stories not only deflected questions about his personal life, but also generated sympathy. In reality, Burr lived with his partner Robert Benavides for over 35 years. They met on the set of Perry Mason in 1960 and remained together until Burr's death in 1993. Together, they built a successful orchid business and vineyard in California, their professional partnership providing cover for their personal one. The pressure of maintaining such elaborate fictions took a toll on Burr. Friends noted how he would sometimes get details of his fake past mixed up in interviews. Studio publicists worked overtime to keep his stories straight and journalists at bay. Colleague Barbara Hale, who played Della Street on Perry Mason, later admitted, "We all knew, but nobody talked about it. That's just how things were then. Raymond was a wonderful man who deserved happiness, but the world wasn't ready for the truth." When Burr died of kidney cancer, obituaries repeated his fictional biography. Only years later would the truth about his life with Benavides become widely acknowledged. Number 12. Randolph Scott. Randolph Scott defined the American Western hero for an entire generation. Across a career spanning over 100 films, his steely gaze, laconic style, and impressive horsemanship made him the ultimate cowboy. With his weathered face and lean, powerful build, Scott embodied frontier masculinity, playing rugged lawmen and gunfighters who lived by a strict moral code. What fans never knew was that the man who played the quintessential lone wolf on screen shared his life with another Hollywood legend off screen. For over a decade, Scott lived with Cary Grant in what they jokingly called their bachelor quarters in Los Angeles. Their domestic arrangement, which they never bothered to hide in the 1930s, later became problematic as studios grew concerned about public perception. Fan magazines published photos of the two stars in matching robes, doing household chores together, creating an image of bachelor buddies that seems almost comically transparent today. The press called their beachfront home Bachelor Hall, and the arrangement was an open secret in Hollywood circles. Scott eventually married wealthy heiress Patricia Stillman in 1944, and their union lasted until his death. Whether this marriage was one of convenience or genuine love remains debated by historians, but many believe Scott maintained his relationship with men discreetly throughout his life. Director Bud Budisher, who directed Scott in 7 classic westerns, later commented, "Randy never talked about it, never had to. He was too respected for anyone to dare question him." Scott invested his earnings wisely in real estate and oil, becoming one of Hollywood's wealthiest stars with a fortune estimated at over $100 million at his death. When he passed away in 1987 at age 89, obituaries focused on his screen legacy as America's favorite cowboy, leaving the complexities of his private life unexamined until years later. Number 11. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins terrified audiences as the disturbed Norman Bates in Psycho, but his talent extended far beyond horror. He brought intensity to action thrillers like The Black Hole, 5 Miles to Midnight, and Edge of Sanity. His ability to balance vulnerability with unpredictable danger made him a uniquely compelling action star, capable of both sympathy and menace. Behind his success lay a painful struggle with his identity. Raised in an era when homosexuality was considered both a crime and a mental illness, Perkins lived in constant fear of exposure. Studio publicists arranged dates with actresses like Jane Fonda and Audrey Hepburn to maintain his public image, while he secretly had relationships with men, including a significant romance with actor Tab Hunter. The intense scrutiny of Hollywood drove Perkins to seek therapy to cure his homosexuality. He underwent years of treatment, determined to conform to society's expectations. In a move that shocked those who knew him best, he married photographer Barry Berenson in 1973 at age 41 and had 2 sons. Barry later revealed she had entered the marriage knowing about Perkins' sexuality, but believed they could make it work. According to friends, Perkins genuinely loved his family while continuing to struggle with his identity. When Perkins was diagnosed with AIDS in 1990, he kept his condition secret from all but his closest confidants. He feared that revealing his illness would not only expose his sexuality, but also damage his family and career. He continued working until just weeks before his death in 1992. His son Osgood Perkins later reflected, "He was a man who had to hide so much of himself from the world. That kind of lifelong performance takes a tremendous toll. In a cruel twist of fate, Barry Berenson died 9 years later as a passenger on one of the planes that struck the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. Number 10. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift revolutionized action cinema with his raw emotional intensity. In films like From Here to Eternity and The Young Lions, he rejected the wooden heroism of earlier stars, bringing psychological depth to soldiers and fighters that had never been seen before. His boxing scenes in From Here to Eternity showed a vulnerability behind the violence that changed how action heroes could be portrayed. Clift's haunting good looks made him an instant heartthrob, but he refused to sign a studio contract, valuing his independence over security. This freedom didn't extend to his personal life, however. Though he had relationships with men throughout his life, he maintained a careful public image, occasionally dating women like Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe, who became his closest friends and protectors. The pressure of hiding his true self fueled Clift's growing dependence on alcohol and pain medication. Friends described him as the slowest suicide in Hollywood history. The inner torment became external after a devastating car crash in 1956 left his perfect face permanently damaged. Taylor, who was nearby when it happened, rushed to the scene and reportedly pulled broken teeth from his throat to prevent him from choking. The accident changed everything. Clift's damaged appearance limited his leading man roles, and his substance abuse made him increasingly unreliable on set. Still, directors fought to work with him because his performances remained electric even as his health deteriorated. Director John Huston said, "Monty was the only one who could play a scene in the exact way it was written. He understood pain because he lived it." Clift's final role in The Defector showed flashes of his former brilliance, but by then, years of self-destruction had taken their toll. When he died alone in his New York townhouse in 1966 at just 45, he left behind a legacy of performances that transformed acting forever, and a personal story of struggle that remained largely untold until years after his death. Number 9. Ramon Novarro. Ramon Novarro made history as one of Hollywood's first Latin action stars, captivating audiences in the 1925 epic Ben-Hur: A Tale of the Christ. His athletic prowess, smoldering intensity, and exotic looks made him MGM's answer to Rudolph Valentino. Studios marketed him as the ultimate romantic hero, the Latin lover who could make audiences swoon with just a glance. Born Ramon Samaniego in Mexico, Novarro escaped the Mexican Revolution and found fame in Hollywood's silent era. His chariot race in Ben-Hur remains one of cinema's most thrilling action sequences, performed without stunt doubles or special effects. At the peak of his fame, he commanded $10,000 per week, an astronomical sum for the 1920s. But Novarro harbored a secret that could destroy everything he'd built. As a devout Catholic and a gay man, he lived with constant inner conflict. Unlike many stars of his era, he refused to enter a lavender marriage of convenience with a woman. MGM boss Louis B. Mayer pressured him repeatedly, but Novarro stood firm, preferring to present himself as a bachelor devoted to his family and faith. The transition to talking pictures proved difficult for Novarro, whose accent limited his roles. Though he continued acting into the 1960s, he never recaptured his earlier stardom. He lived quietly in the Hollywood Hills, surrounded by mementos of his glory days. Tragically, Novarro's story ended in brutal violence. In 1968, at age 69, he was tortured and beaten to death in his home by two brothers he had invited over. They believed he kept large sums of money hidden in his house. The tabloids sensationalized the crime, focusing on Novarro's sexuality rather than the loss of a pioneering star. Film historian William Mann later wrote, "Ramon's death exposed the danger faced by gay men of his generation, forced to seek connection in secrecy and shadow. Today, Novarro is remembered as both a groundbreaking action star and a victim of the homophobia that shaped his life and death." Number 8. Cesar Romero. Cesar Romero swashbuckled across screens with unmatched elegance. Before captivating audiences as the Joker in the Batman television series, he built a career on action-filled adventures. In films like Captain from Castile, The Beautiful Blonde from Bashful Bend, and Ocean's 11, Romero brought aristocratic flair to action roles, fighting with the grace of a dancer and the precision of a fencer. Known as the Latin from Manhattan, Romero's elegance and charm made him perfect for playing sophisticated villains and dashing heroes alike. Famously, he refused to shave his trademark mustache for the Joker role, forcing makeup artists to simply apply white face paint over it. That small act of defiance spoke volumes about a man who lived life on his own terms. Unlike many of his closeted contemporaries, Romero seemed at peace with who he was. He never married, never fabricated romantic relationships with women, and never denied rumors about his sexuality. Instead, he crafted an image as a perpetual bachelor, a sophisticated man about town who escorted glamorous stars to premieres and parties. This carefully maintained persona allowed him a freedom few gay actors of his generation enjoyed. Hollywood columnist Hedda Hopper once wrote, "Caesar is the perfect escort for any lady requiring a gentleman for an evening. He's handsome, charming, and absolutely safe." The coded language would have been clear to those in the know while maintaining plausible deniability for mainstream audiences. Marlene Dietrich, who counted Romero among her closest friends, appreciated his discretion. "Cesar knows how to keep secrets," she once said. "In Hollywood, that makes him more valuable than gold." Romero worked steadily into his 80s, starring in a remarkable 60 films across 6 decades. When he passed away in 1994 at age 86, his sexuality was still officially unacknowledged. It was only in subsequent years that biographers and friends began to speak openly about this aspect of his life, revealing a man who had managed that rarest of Hollywood feats, living truthfully while keeping his privacy. Number 7. Dirk Bogarde. Dirk Bogarde transformed from matinee idol to daring provocateur over his remarkable career. British audiences first fell for him in the action-packed doctor films and war epics like The Sea Shall Not Have Them. His intensity and physical presence made him perfect for tales of heroism and adventure, while his smoldering good looks had women lining up at box offices. What fans never suspected was that Bogarde was fighting his own private battle. At a time when homosexuality was illegal in Britain, he maintained a 40-year relationship with his manager Anthony Forwood. The two lived together openly, explaining their arrangement as a business partnership and friendship. Reporters and fans accepted this fiction because the alternative seemed unthinkable for a star of Bogarde's stature. Unlike many closeted actors, Bogarde eventually used his art to challenge the very prejudices that kept him silent. In 1961, he stunned audiences by starring in Victim, playing a married lawyer who takes on blackmailers targeting gay men. The film is credited with helping change British laws against homosexuality, which were finally reformed in 1967. When asked about playing such controversial roles, Bogarde deflected with practiced skill. An actor should be willing to play any part if it's interesting and well written. Behind this professional explanation lay a personal mission to change society's attitudes, even if he couldn't publicly acknowledge his stake in the fight. In his later years, Bogarde became an acclaimed author, writing autobiographies that carefully documented his life while omitting direct references to his sexuality. The volumes contained subtle clues, however, and in his final years, he became more open about his relationship with Forwood, who had died in 1988. Critic David Thompson later wrote, "Bogarde lived two lives, the public hero adored by millions, and the private man who fought for change through his art when he couldn't do so with his words." When Bogarde died in 1999, he left behind a legacy of courage that went far beyond his action hero roles. Number 6. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo exploded onto screens as the troubled teenager Plato in Rebel Without a Cause, earning an Oscar nomination at just 17. While not exclusively an action star, Mineo brought emotional intensity to physical roles in films like The Gene Krupa Story, Exodus, and Escape from the Planet of the Apes, where his athletic build and expressive eyes made him compelling in scenes of conflict and danger. Born to Sicilian immigrants in the Bronx, Mineo began as a child actor, but it was his role opposite James Dean that made him a star. Playing a troubled teen with an obvious crush on Dean's character, Mineo brought a subtle queerness to mainstream cinema that resonated with countless closeted viewers. The role was closer to his reality than audiences knew, As Mineo aged out of teenage roles, Hollywood struggled to know what to do with him. The sensitive vulnerability that made him perfect for Rebel didn't fit the traditional action hero mold of the 1960s. His career faltered, and he turned to stage work and directing. Unlike many gay actors of his generation, Mineo became increasingly open about his sexuality in the freer atmosphere of the 1970s. He directed and starred in a play called Fortune and Men's Eyes that dealt explicitly with homosexuality in prison, shocking audiences with its frankness. He lived with actor Courtney Burr for 6 years in what was essentially an open relationship by Hollywood standards of the time. This newfound authenticity seemed to rejuvenate Mineo professionally. Critics praised his stage work, and film offers were beginning to come in again. Then tragedy struck. In 1976, returning home from a play rehearsal, Mineo was stabbed to death in the alley behind his West Hollywood apartment building. He was just 37. Initial media coverage implied his murder was connected to his sexuality, but it was later proven to be a random robbery gone wrong. The truth of his life was overshadowed by sensationalized speculation about his death, a final injustice to an actor who had finally begun to live honestly. Number 5. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter dominated action screens throughout the 1950s with his all-American charm and athletic prowess. Films like Battle Cry, The Burning Hills, and Gunman's Walk showcased his writing skills and fighting abilities, while his blonde hair and dazzling smile made him a teen heartthrob who received thousands of fan letters weekly. Warner Brothers carefully crafted Hunter's image as the wholesome boy next door. Studio publicists arranged photo ops showing him on dates with starlets like Debbie Reynolds and Natalie Wood, creating a fictitious playboy image. The truth couldn't have been more different. Hunter later revealed that he and Wood would attend premieres together, then drop her at her date's house before he went to meet his own boyfriend. Hunter's career faced its greatest threat when the scandal magazine Confidential discovered he had been arrested at a gay party in 1950. In a move that exposed the cutthroat tactics of old Hollywood, Hunter's agent Henry Wilson sacrificed another client, actor Rory Calhoun, feeding the magazine information about Calhoun's prison record to divert attention from Hunter's sexuality. The narrow escape didn't end Hunter's challenges. He lived in constant fear of exposure, knowing that one indiscretion could destroy everything. Surprisingly, during this period, Hunter managed to record a #1 hit song, Young Love, showcasing his versatility as a performer even while under immense personal stress. As the studio system declined, so did Hunter's career. He found himself starring in beach movies with Frankie Avalon and working in dinner theater, a dramatic fall for a former top-billed star. Unlike many of his contemporaries, however, Hunter eventually found peace. In his 2005 autobiography, Tab Hunter Confidential, he finally told his full story, including his relationships with figure skater Ronnie Robertson and actor Anthony Perkins. I thought, look, get it from the horse's mouth and not from some horse's ass after I'm dead and gone. Hunter explained about his decision to come out at 73. He spent his final years with his partner of over 35 years, film producer Alan Glazer, before passing away in 2018, just 3 days before his 87th birthday. Number 4. Brad Davis. Brad Davis electrified audiences with his intense physical performances. After his breakthrough in Midnight Express, where he played a prisoner fighting for survival in a brutal Turkish jail, Davis established himself as an action star capable of extraordinary emotional depth. Films like Chariots of Fire and the submarine thriller The Final Countdown showcased his athletic ability and raw charisma. Off-screen, Davis fought battles that made his on-screen struggles pale in comparison. Growing up with an alcoholic father who abused him, Davis developed his own addictions to alcohol and drugs early in his career. Even as his star rose, he was falling into a cycle of substance abuse that threatened everything. What the public didn't know was that Davis was also hiding his bisexuality. In Hollywood's hypermasculine action genre, being anything other than straight was career suicide. Though Davis married Susan Bluestein in 1976 and had a child with her, close friends knew he had relationships with men as well. The greatest challenge of Davis's life came in 1985 when he was diagnosed with HIV during the height of the AIDS crisis. At that time, the diagnosis was essentially a death sentence compounded by intense social stigma. Davis kept his condition secret from all but his closest circle, fearing it would make him uninsurable and end his career instantly. For 6 years, Davis continued working while taking medication that caused painful side effects, including muscle wasting that he disguised with specially padded costumes. His final role in The Player was filmed when he was seriously ill, though viewers would never have known from his powerful performance. When Davis died in 1991 at just 41, his widow made the extraordinary decision to reveal not only that he had died of AIDS, but that he had acquired HIV through intravenous drug use rather than sexual contact. This decision, which Susan Davis later acknowledged was made to protect his reputation in homophobic Hollywood, ironically perpetuated the very stigma Brad had feared in life. Years later, Susan wrote a memoir revealing the full truth of their complex marriage and Brad's bisexuality, finally allowing him the honesty in death that he couldn't risk in life. Number 3. George Nader. George Nader stood on the verge of action stardom in the 1950s with his rugged good looks and impressive physique. Universal Studios groomed him for leading roles in films like Six Bridges to Cross, Away All Boats, and The Female Animal. With his deep voice and athletic build, Nader seemed destined for the same level of fame as his friend Rock Hudson. That friendship would ultimately alter the course of Nader's Hollywood career forever. In 1955, when the scandal magazine Confidential threatened to expose Hudson's homosexuality, Universal Studios made a fateful decision. Rather than risk losing their biggest star, they offered the magazine a different target: George Nader. The studio essentially sacrificed Nader's career to protect Hudson's. The resulting scandal didn't end Nader's career entirely, but it severely limited his opportunities in Hollywood. He continued working in television and B-movies, but the A-list stardom once within his grasp vanished overnight. Eventually, he moved to Europe, where he found success in German films, particularly as FBI agent Jerry Cotton in a series of popular crime thrillers. Throughout these professional challenges, Nader maintained a remarkable personal stability. He lived with his partner Mark Miller from 1957 until Nader's death in 2002, an extraordinary 45-year relationship that outlasted most Hollywood marriages. Miller, who worked as Rock Hudson's secretary, formed a bridge between the two friends whose careers had diverged so dramatically because of studio politics. Hudson never forgot the sacrifice his friend had made. When he died of AIDS in 1985, he left Nader the bulk of his estate, providing financial security for the man whose career had been damaged to protect his own. Nader and Miller used part of this inheritance to establish the Angels of AIDS Foundation, turning a legacy of secrecy into one of compassion. In his later years, Nader became a successful science fiction writer, publishing the novel Chrome in 1978, which featured one of the first gay protagonists in the genre. This creative reinvention showed the resilience of a man who refused to be defined by Hollywood's betrayal. Number 2. William Haines. William Haines was one of Hollywood's biggest action stars of the late 1920s, known for his athletic prowess and comedic timing. Films like Tell It to the Marines showcased his physical abilities and all-American charm. As one of MGM's top box office draws, his future seemed limitless until studio head Louis B. Mayer delivered an ultimatum that would change everything. Unlike many stars of his era, Haines never hid his homosexuality within Hollywood circles. He lived openly with his partner Jimmy Shields from 1926 onwards, making them one of the industry's most stable couples during a time of arranged studio marriages and publicity romances. For years, MGM looked the other way, focusing on Haines's tremendous popularity with audiences. That changed in 1933, when Haines was arrested in a YMCA bathroom. As moral crusaders targeted Hollywood, Mayer demanded Haines enter a lavender marriage to protect his image and the studio's reputation. The star's response became Hollywood legend. "I'm already married," he told Mayer, referring to his relationship with Shields. Mayer fired him on the spot, ending his film career at its peak. Rather than compromise, Haines walked away from stardom completely. With remarkable resilience, he reinvented himself as an interior designer, building a second career that proved even more enduring than his first. Together with Shields, Haines established a design firm that attracted clients like Joan Crawford, Gloria Swanson, and later Ronald and Nancy Reagan. His elegant aesthetic transformed Hollywood homes and eventually earned him recognition as the decorator of the stars. What began as a forced career change became a groundbreaking second act. The couple remained together for 47 years until Haines's death in 1973. Years later, Joan Crawford would say, "Billy Haines was the happiest married man I ever knew." The star who refused to deny his truth found success on his own terms, proving there was life beyond Hollywood's constraints. In 2019, fashion designer Tom Ford purchased Haines's and Shields' former home in the Hollywood Hills, a fitting tribute to a pioneer who chose authenticity over fame. Number 1. Farley Granger. Farley Granger brought brooding intensity to action thrillers, most memorably in Alfred Hitchcock's Rope and Strangers on a Train. With his dark good looks and explosive emotional range, Granger specialized in characters walking the line between hero and villain. His fight scenes had a raw, desperate quality that set him apart from more straightforward action heroes of his era. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Granger refused to play Hollywood's game of denial and fake relationships. When Samuel Goldwyn, the powerful producer who held his contract, suggested he date various starlets for publicity, Granger simply declined. This defiance limited his career opportunities, but allowed him to maintain a level of personal integrity rare for his time. In his 2007 memoir, Include Me Out, Granger finally confirmed what Hollywood insiders had long known. He was bisexual and had relationships with both men and women throughout his life. Among his male partners was playwright Arthur Lawrence, who wrote Rope with Granger and his co-star John Dahl specifically in mind, knowing both actors were gay. Granger's most significant relationship began in 1963 when he met television producer Robert Calhoun. Their partnership would last over 45 years until Calhoun's death in 2008, far outlasting most Hollywood marriages. Though Granger never made a formal coming-out announcement, he and Calhoun lived openly as a couple, attending industry events together and sharing a home. As his film opportunities dwindled, Granger reinvented himself as a stage and television actor. He found particular success in Europe, where attitudes were less restrictive. He starred in several Italian films and appeared on Broadway, showing remarkable versatility beyond his action roles. Film historian William J. Mann described Granger as one of the most honest stars of his generation, noting that while he didn't march in pride parades, he also never denied his authentic self. Some people called it career suicide, Mann wrote, but Farley called it self-respect. When Granger died in 2011 at age 85, obituaries finally acknowledged the truth he had lived, but rarely discussed publicly. His legacy stands as a reminder that even in Hollywood's most repressive era, some stars found ways to live with dignity on their own terms. These action heroes lived double lives that would rival any plot in their most thrilling films. Forced to choose between their truth and their careers, they created elaborate facades while the cameras rolled. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And ask yourself, in an industry that now celebrates LGBTQ+ representation, how many modern action stars might still be hiding behind carefully crafted public images? The masks may have changed, but for some in Hollywood, the show must still go on.